You don't remember when it started, but you remember the feeling. The subtle tightening in your chest when a message goes unanswered. The way your mind immediately asks, "What did I do wrong?" The instinct to offer more, fix more, give more. Somewhere along the way, you learned something quietly, that your place in people's lives depended on what you provided. Stability, support, solutions, strength, presence, silence. And for a long time, it worked. You were reliable, you were needed, you were chosen. Until one day, you weren't. And the confusion was unbearable. Because you didn't become cruel, you didn't become careless, you didn't suddenly stop loving, you just got tired. You paused, you needed something back, and that's when they left. Here is the paradox no one prepares you for. The very behavior that once secured connection can eventually destroy it. Usefulness creates attachment, but it also creates expectation. And when people unconsciously expect you to function instead of exist, your humanity becomes optional. You were not abandoned because you were bad. You were abandoned because you stopped performing the role that made others comfortable. This is not a story about blame. It is a story about conditioning. And if this hurts, it is because some part of you is realizing a devastating truth. You learned to survive by being valuable, not visible. This pattern often begins early, in environments where love was inconsistent, overwhelmed, or conditional, where adults were emotionally unavailable, stressed, unpredictable, or silently struggling. A child learns quickly. Do not need too much. Do not take up space. Be helpful. Be easy. Be useful. Your nervous system adapts, not toward joy, but toward relevance. You become hyper-aware of tone, mood, distance, not because you are dramatic, but because safety once depended on anticipation. Your mind begins looping a single question: how do I stay needed? Over time, this question becomes identity. You often attract people who receive without noticing, because when you are trained to give without asking, that dynamic feels familiar. Beneath it all sits a quiet belief that your inner world is secondary, that your worth exists primarily in service. This is not weakness, it is adaptation. But adaptation left unexamined becomes destiny. There is a grief no one teaches you how to name. The grief of being valued but not cherished, needed but not known. You begin to notice something painful. People miss what you did more than who you were, and that realization fractures something inside. You feel it in small moments, when you hesitate before resting, when receiving feels uncomfortable, when you apologize for needing reassurance, when you minimize your own exhaustion. You gave up authenticity for acceptance, not consciously, strategically. When something remains unconscious, it becomes fate, and for many, usefulness becomes fate. You fear abandonment, not because you are fragile, but because history taught you that connection is conditional. This grief has no ceremony, no acknowledgement, just the slow disappearance of your unexpressed self. In adulthood, the pattern continues. In relationships, you overfunction emotionally. You become the listener, the fixer, the stabilizer. You attract people in chaos and lose them when they stabilize. In work, you become indispensable but invisible, trusted with responsibility, overlooked for recognition. Burnout disguises itself as dedication. In self-worth, you feel valuable only when producing or helping. Rest triggers guilt. Stillness feels unsafe. In boundaries, No feels dangerous, so you explain, justify, soften, and apologize. In identity, you know who you are to others, but not who you are alone. These are not flaws, they are coping mechanisms that once kept you safe. Healing does not begin with self-criticism, it begins with witnessing, seeing the pattern without excusing it, naming it without shaming it. Healing does not mean becoming less caring, it means becoming less conditional with yourself. It begins with a simple question: what did I need that I learned to provide instead? It continues by reclaiming the parts of you that were deemed inconvenient: need, softness, anger, desire. Your body learns something new, that rest is not abandonment, that stillness is not danger, and perhaps the most radical step, choosing softness over survival. Not everyone will stay when you stop overgiving, but those who do will finally meet you. You were never meant to earn your place in love. The goal is not to be fixed, the goal is to become whole. If this resonated, it is because something in you is ready to be chosen, not for what you provide, but for what you are. And that choice is no longer about usefulness, it is about connection.